But soon after, the girls turned on her and started attacking her. At around 9 p.m., one of the girls posted some disturbing pictures on Snapchat where you can clearly see Angela looking distressed with bruises on her face. The attack continued for hours. It's not known when exactly Angela died after this, but she actually bled to death. Now, when most people commit crimes, they try to cover up their tracks and get far away from the police as possible. But not in this case. These teenagers not only made the cops their getaway drivers, but they also posted their crimes on Snapchat. Let's explore the crazy case of the teens who killed a woman and then immediately posted on Snapchat. This totally disturbing case happened in Hartlepool, England, and involved two young teenage girls aged 13 and 14 years. And because they were so young when they committed the crime, their identities were concealed. But they were given pseudonyms, Yasmin and Olivia. Yasmin is the younger girl, while Olivia is the older one. The two girls had known each other since early childhood, but they weren't really close until a few months before this incident. Since they both had troubled childhoods, they naturally gravitated towards each other and became completely inseparable. They would regularly post on social media, declaring their love and eternal friendship for each other and some other friends. Yasmin referred to Olivia as her partner in crime, saying that they would be together through thick and thin. Now, both Olivia and Yasmin grew up in abusive households, and when this case was taking place, they were both in the care system. Olivia was living in a children's home while Yasmin was living with a foster family. The girls were also in special schools that catered for troubled youths. Both girls started drinking and experimenting with substances at the age of 11. They would skip school and run away from their care homes to go out drinking and partying till late at night. They were also known for their aggressive behaviors towards their classmates. Olivia, who is said to be the most volatile of the two, was going through anger management therapy after she attacked one of her care workers. The two girls would be seen roaming around town, drinking, smoking, and getting into trouble. And since they were both underage and could not buy alcohol on their own, they would usually hang outside a store waiting for someone who would do it for them. And that's how they came to meet a woman by the name of Angela Wrightson. Born in the mid-1970s, Angela had the same childhood as these two girls growing up in foster care and started drinking at the age of 11. As she got older, her drinking became heavier to the point that she would not function without alcohol. And because she was also suffering from some mental illness, she would get in trouble a lot with the police and was in and out of jail multiple times. At some point, she was even banned from buying alcohol for 2 years. Of course, she ignored the ban and continued drinking. The local government tried to get her admitted into rehab, but she always found a way out. When sober, Angie was a kind and caring person who liked kids and dogs. She also loved going to church and keeping her house meticulously clean and tidy. But when drunk, Angela was a completely different person. She was rude and rowdy and was always getting into fights. Her neighbors said that they would always see her with bruises on her face. She also had a habit of going out to lie in the middle of the road and making prank calls to the police. People around town nicknamed her Alco Angie because of her drinking.
She was, especially in the street where she lived, everybody knew in the street, and everybody sort of like looked out for her because they knew she was vulnerable.
According to her friends, Angie preferred life in prison to being out there. She found it much easier and safer, and she even made friends there. While in prison, she had a job as a laundrywoman, and she felt appreciated and valued. Upon her release from prison in 2011, Angela, who was originally from Darlington, moved to Hartlepool for a fresh start. She got a boyfriend and made friends with local dog owners who would let her look after their dogs, and she was the happiest she could ever be. For a short while, things seemed to be looking up for Angela, but then her boyfriend died due to some alcohol-related illnesses, leaving Angela completely heartbroken. From that point onwards, her life spiraled out of control, where she would even sleep at the beach because some people had taken over her house. They would come to her house, steal from her, and leave it completely ruined. Angie became a chronic alcoholic, using her money to buy alcohol instead of food. At 39 years old, she seemed a lot older, only weighing 90 pounds. She would wear layers of clothes to keep herself warm, even in the summer. She would start drinking as soon as she woke up and continue until she passed out, either in the streets or in her house. But even in her drunkenness, Angie would still show some form of kindness to the local children by buying chocolate bars for them. Having been estranged from her family, Angela was extremely lonely and craved human interaction. She would sit outside her house talking to passerbys and even inviting strangers into her home. She allowed local teenagers to use her house as a drinking and smoking spot and would even go out and buy drinks for them. As you can imagine, this made her very popular among the teens in the area, but they started taking advantage of her, showing up late at night and forcing her to go out and buy them alcohol. Sometimes they would even refuse to leave her home, and Angela would call her neighbor to make the teens go away. On the afternoon of December 8th, 2014, Angela got into a heated fight with her landlord after he refused to buy drinks for her. She threw her keys at him a number of times, and eventually he took them and left. The next morning, the landlord came to return the keys to her and was horrified by what he found. Angela's house was all trashed up, with broken furniture and glass and red splatters everywhere. Angela was lying on the sofa, dead. But the condition she was in was even more horrifying. She was half naked from the waist down and had hundreds of injuries all over her body, with most of them being on her head. Who could have done such an awful thing? During the investigation, the police found out that the attack lasted for about 5 hours, and that Angela had died a slow, agonizing death. The perpetrators had used various objects in the house as weapons, including a shovel, a TV, a coffee table, and a stick studded with screws. Clearly, the people who did this were monsters, and the police were determined to find them, and that did not take long. That same day, on December 9th, police arrested Yasmin and Olivia and charged them with the murder of Angela.
I mean, it was awful. Really. You can't imagine 2 young girls doing that to another human being.
Apparently, on the evening of the crime, Yasmin and Olivia showed up at Angela's house and demanded that she buy them drinks and cigarettes. Angela complied and was even captured on CCTV buying them the items at a local shop at around 7:30 p.m. But soon after, the girls turned on her and started attacking her. They hit her with a TV, a shovel, and a wooden stick studded with screws as she cried and begged them to stop. At around 9 p.m., one of the girls posted some disturbing pictures on Snapchat where you can clearly see Angela looking distressed with bruises on her face. The attack continued for hours, and then at around 11 p.m., 2 of Angela's drinking buddies came over to the house hoping to have a drink with Angela. They banged the door and shouted her name several times, but no one answered. At the time, Olivia and Yasmin were hiding in the bathroom, waiting for the women to leave so they could continue the assault. Angela was probably unconscious or too weak to call for help. One of the women impatiently tried the door and found that it was unlocked. She put her head in, and upon seeing the state of the house, she shouted to her friend saying, "Someone's wrecked Angie's house. You should see the state of it." But the other friend shouted back, "I don't care." So the 2 women left. This is really heartbreaking because it shows the type of friends that Angela really had. They didn't care at all for her and were only there for the drinks. If they actually cared enough to check on her, Angela would probably still be here today. Some moments after that, Angela and Yasmin started to get bored and decided to go and meet up with a friend. The friend noticed their bloody clothes and was like, "What happened? Why are your clothes like that?" And the girls just said that they had fallen and quickly changed the subject. They hung out with the friend for like 2 hours and then decided to go back to Angela's place. Now, I can probably guess what you're thinking. That maybe the girls had time to think about their actions and were going back to check on Angela and make sure that she was okay. But sadly, you're wrong. These 2 sickos actually went back to finish what they started. They were captured on CCTV at around 2 a.m., going back to Angela's house to continue the attack. It's not known when exactly Angela died after this, but she actually bled to death. At around 4 a.m., the girls decided that it was time to go home, But since they could not get a cab and none of their caretakers were picking up the phone, they figured, why not call the cops and get a free ride home? And that's what they did.
Hello? I've just reported myself missing. I've just...
Reported yourself missing? Shouting in my ear, can you just, what happened?
Like, I've just rang to the police store where me and my friend are at. Will you tell me how long we're going to be on? Freezing and sort of wrong.
The voices have been distorted in this to protect their privacy, but basically what they did was report themselves missing and asked the cops to come and pick them up. You can hear them giggling and acting like it was the most normal thing to do after you've just committed murder. They even had the audacity to tell the cops to be quick about it, since they were freezing. I don't know whether to call this arrogance, stupidity, or just insane. And get this, when the police picked them up, they actually took a selfie inside the police van and posted it on Snapchat with the caption, "In the back of a busy van again." That's insane! Later that morning, Yasmin's foster parents found her bloody clothes and called the cops. It did not take long for the police to piece together the story and bring both girls in for questioning. As you might expect in most cases involving teenagers, the girls soon turned on each other, with Yasmin claiming that she didn't know what was going on because she was on Facebook on her phone, while Olivia was hitting and throwing things at Angela. However, the police soon found out that Yasmin was actually the one who orchestrated the attack. They learned that when Olivia was attacking Angela, Yasmin was sitting on the couch smoking and talking to a friend over the phone, and that the friend heard her saying, and I quote, "Kick her head in! Why isn't she knocked out yet? Go on! Her, Breyer." Olivia, who was found to have a low IQ between 60 and 70, told the police she didn't know someone could die from anything else other than being stabbed in the heart, in the head, or cancer. The police later found a disturbing image that Olivia had drawn a few hours before the attack that showed a smiling girl plunging a knife into a man's chest and tears running down the victim's face. During their trial, both girls accepted that they were there during the attack, but denied the murder charges. Olivia admitted to manslaughter, saying that Yasmin told her to do it. I kicked Angie in the head and the face, about 7 times, I think. Then Yasmin told me to kick her again, so I kicked her some more in the belly and head and face. The trial lasted for 7 weeks, and eventually both girls were found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison, without a possibility of parole for 15 years. As the verdict was being read out loud, both girls broke down into tears, probably just realizing the consequences of their actions.
Never come across a crime that's been as terrible as this. I can't imagine that any of my officers have. And the girls just don't seem to understand that. They've never shown any remorse, and hopefully one day they will.
Now, after the trial, there was a huge outcry from the public demanding that the names of the killers be revealed. But after a lot of consultation and the fact that both girls were at risk of harming themselves if that ever happened, it was decided that the names should stay anonymous for as long as they live. What do you think about this case? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and be sure to like and subscribe for more.